Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And welcome. Sorry, I've got two phones ringing at the very moment. I tried to stay muted for that. It's always crazy around here at the Truth Denied DEA. We've got a wonderful guest. It's the perfect evening for it, you know, being Friday. Tere Joyce is our guest this evening. I'm going to bring her on in just a moment. Let me catch you up on the news. Why is it so difficult to end the government shutdown? And many have asked, the last time there was a partial shutdown of the federal government, there was a Democrat in the White House. Interesting, isn't it? And Republicans controlled the House of Representatives. That's where the similarities end, though. If you want to take a look at the rest of this story, I'll drop a link in for you. It's quite interesting. The government was closed in 1994, and I just don't recall it myself. It was a non-event for me. But you know, in today's world, you know, we're just much more newsworthy, right? We get the news much quicker with social media. And honest to God, in 1995 to 1996, when they had a total of 27 days that shut down between 1995 and 1996, 27 days of the government shutting down. I do not recall that. Some of you may. Good on you. Personally, I don't think I was interested at all one way or the other during that year, being I was on tour and had just moved to Seattle, Washington, and had just landed a record deal with A&M Records. So I think it was the last thing on my mind. And of course, the government shutdowns did not affect me in any way. But, you know, when you look at it today, you know, you've got, and I didn't get the statistics for the 27 days that were shut down during those 2 years between 95 and 96. But today I know that 800,000 workers are on furlough, costing the U.S. economy $300 million a day. Now, you might ask the question, if you lay off and don't pay 800,000 workers, all right, how is that costing us? You'd think it would be saving us billions of dollars, right? How's it costing us $300 million a day? I gave you the link. You can take a look at it and find out for yourself. It's quite interesting. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service forecast offices all over the county, Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, as well as the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, are all continuing to work, even though they are not getting paid right now, as well. NOAA websites are continuing to function through the shutdown, and many workers have been laid off, and some of these organizations are on what you call skeleton crews. Interesting, isn't it? They're working, and they know they're not going to get paid. Now, some of you have asked the question as well, and I'll try to answer it best I can. If the government opens back up in a couple of weeks, which I seriously doubt it, because they now are focused on the debt ceiling. Don't forget they kicked the can all the way down the road in 2013 regarding the debt ceiling and raising the debt ceiling. So it's just going to be interesting how this all plays out. But will those workers get reimbursed or retro pay? That's not even on the table. So I don't know if they're just basically working for free. But if I were you, I'd call my congressman, I'd call my senator, because they're not included in the furloughs, and they won't be, and they continue all the way up to the president to get paid. It's just a very interesting debacle, if you ask me. The FBI releases a chilling video footage, CCTV of Navy Yard shooter. Remember that Navy Aaron Alexis attack? Remember that? He went in and shot a bunch of people. I believe it was like 16 or 17 people right down the street from the White House. I get tired of hearing these stories about happenings like this right down the street from the White House. But anyway, I'm going to give you a YouTube video. You can check it out later. Tell me if you think, supposedly this is the FBI camera inside the building showing the shooter bringing in a bag, going through some doors, going around corners. It looks very Hollywood to me. I'm saying thumbs down. I don't believe that this is an FBI. I haven't been able to look into it any further today. Sorry, but I haven't been able to investigate it. But you tell me if you think that this looks authentic, because I don't. I ain't buying it. Which, if it was authentic, it answers the question of how this guy who worked at the Navy shipyard actually got into secured areas of the base with a gun, a pretty large gun. Anyway, raw DC police car slams into barriers at Capitol Hill yesterday. Here's another one. Tell me thumbs up or thumbs down. Personally, I think this one's real. It was shot by somebody who was on the sidelines. There's a lot of swearing in it, so if you are allergic to swearing, don't look at it. But I'd like your feedback from the chat room on these two videos. I want to know if they're believable, if you think they're real, or you think they're a hoax. I think the raw DC police car slams into barriers at Capitol Hill is absolutely real. And I've got one more for you. The entire House of Representatives gives a standing ovation to cops after killing unarmed mother yesterday. Take a look at this. Now, this isn't a hoax. This isn't not real or real. I want you to know this made me sick. I hope that, crossing my fingers, if anyone want to look into this, it's called Entire House of Representatives Gives Standing Ovation to Cops After Killing Unarmed Mother, with this incident that happened yesterday. It's real footage, but is it in the context? Now, if you, 51 seconds into it, the senator actually says the context. Then there's about, a minute of a standing ovation. And then there's a dissertation afterwards of how they did the right thing. The cops did the right thing for the protection of the White House, the protection of everybody who works in government there in D.C. You tell me what you think about it. And that's all three. And you can tell me any time. You can write me at info@thetruthDenied.com if you want to talk about this later. And you can contact me on my Facebook page, Roxy Lopez, The Truth Denied. Now let's get to my guest. I just have to say thank you so much to my guest this evening, Tere Joyce, comedian Tere Joyce. This is going to be a fun show. Tere's a serious lady. She's also a comedian, and she can turn things that are pretty heavy into something that's much lighter that we can all laugh at, which I can certainly appreciate. Some of my favorites in the past, as you all know, is George Carlin. And, of course, the wonderful Sandra Bernhard. Where did she go? I know where George is. He's watching us all from above. But I don't know where Sandra Bernhard is. But anyway, a couple of my favorites. And, of course, my old-time favorite that had me in stitches way back in the day and can still do it today is Lucille Ball. One of my favorite female comedians, and of course I love Bette Midler. Very funny people. Tere is right there in the company of those that I have mentioned. And tonight, listen, she's doing a benefit at the Sports Axis for breast cancer awareness right after the show tonight. So can you believe it? She made the show, and when I asked her, geez, why didn't you just cancel the show? You got to get over and do something much more important. She said, because I booked you first. So she's not only a well-known comedian in entertainment, she also keeps her word. How about that? Interesting. I love that. Let's see. So I'm going to put a link into the chat room and the address in Longview, Washington, where Tere is going to be raising, my old stomping grounds, by the way, where she's going to be raising some money for breast cancer. And if you can't make it, or you live in Washington and you can't make it, pass it on to somebody in Washington who can make it. I'd really appreciate that. Tere Joyce was your typical American stand-up comedian whose goals, life, and career existed in the matrix of Hollywood. No doubt. I can relate. Then one day she found herself staring down the barrel of a gun during a federal DEA raid in California at a medical marijuana dispensary. The experience was a catalyst for Tere to examine her government, politics, media, cannabis legislation, and what she refers to as the 1%. Her creative awakening has inspired her to become an art activist We're meeting a lot of them. On Monday's show, Mia Farrelletto is the same thing, an art activist. And she's currently creating a one-woman comedy show and coinciding web series entitled Freedom of Joyce. I love it. Freedom of Joyce. Get it? Freedom of choice, freedom of Joyce. Love it. Okay. After her experience with the raid, Tere experienced the beginning of her awakening and realized that her involvement with the cannabis plant was not an accident, but was in fact, part of a blueprint of her incarnation. It's one of those things, people, that every step you take in life leads you to the next, yes? And everything you ever learned in life gets you to where you are right now. It's why we are who we are in the moment from everything that's come before us. And I can see that this is what Tere is explaining to us. It was the beginning of her awakening, and she realized that her involvement with the cannabis plant was not an accident, but was in fact part of the blueprint of her incarnation. She saw that the cannabis hemp plant had been suppressed and that its freedom was directly connected to the life and health of the planet. She began to work with a nonprofit, the Patients Advocacy Network, which she currently serves as one of the board members. She has produced, hosted, and performed her stand-up comedy for fundraisers for those who needed legal defense funds, i.e. growers, and California medical marijuana dispensary operators who have been targeted and raided by the DEA, feds, local police, or IRS. She's helped create the first medical marijuana float to be entered in the West Hollywood Gay Pride Parade. Yay! The controversial float made the judges laugh and ended up winning the coveted Butterfly Award for the most colorful and original float. I love that. There's so much more that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'd rather we hear it from Tere Joyce's mouth. We're going to cover a whole lot. How did she get started in stand-up comedy? How reality television is media manipulation? How the DEA raid was a catalyst to evolution of Tere's personal path? Shows that are upcoming that Tere's involved in. We're going to cover the gamut here tonight, and we better get busy because we've only got, an hour? No, 2 hours. A little bit less than 2 hours. Welcome to the show, Tere Joyce. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I've really, really been looking forward to doing your show. I'm a big fan, and I listen to your guests are phenomenal. As a matter of fact, a couple of your shows have actually gave me pre-info to an experience that I had as well, which I find kind of interesting. So it's I just love it. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. The feeling's mutual. Just before we get in on, all of your activism and what you've been doing, would you just comment on this government shutdown just for a moment? Your take on it at all? Or is it affecting your life, or is it a comedy show for you? I mean, what does it look like from where you're standing?
Well, I find it interesting that what programs are who is being affected by the cut. I found it rather disturbing that the president, the only thing because I don't have television, so I do, but I don't. So I found a video where President Obama is assuring the military that they'll get their paychecks on time and will continue to do our efforts in the war in Afghanistan. I'm like, wow, that's where his priorities are at. It's like, forget everybody else, or, there's a program that might be cut that are for mothers who need extra food and provided for their babies, and that program might be cut, but the military and their families will make sure that they're provided for. And I just really think it shows where our focus is, where our priorities are. If that doesn't say that America is about going to war and they're perpetuating what we think they're perpetuating, I think that's a clear clear indication that that's true. And, you know, they say, well, we're going to shut it down for because of healthcare, because healthcare, we can't, this is too much, it's the healthcare issue. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I'm not seeing this healthcare. I mean, I've never had healthcare most of my adult life. And so where has the money started to happen? Because it hasn't really even officially been implemented yet. So these are my feelings about it. You know, the parks and, you know, our recreational area, it's going to be closed down. These monuments will be closed down. So what? What are you going to do to us? Well, we can't step on there and walk out there and go, hey, there's a tree. I belong here with it. I don't get where things are being taken away from us. That why are we being punished if they can't make their decisions and decide what their budget is and how they're going to pay themselves? That makes them look completely inept. That's my opinion. I don't know. It's not really funny yet, but
no, but I know what you're saying. No, not yet. You'll probably turn it into something funny. But at the same token, you know, as an example of closing the parks, and then we're just going to move on from here. But you know, the Grand Canyon, and so you know, they're saying that it's costing more money to close the Grand Canyon than it is to keep it open. I can't hear you, Terry.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I missed a little bit of what you said.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, we get little technical stuff going on here occasionally. But what I said is they've been doing a piece here in Arizona on the Grand Canyon. And so the Grand Canyon was closed. People were planning on getting married there the past weekend, what have you. And basically, I was just told by the producer it was Skype. Okay. So Skype kind of interfered with us there, Terry. But anyway, but it's costing more money to hire people and barricades and staff the parks to keep people out than it is to leave the parks open.
That's just, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how much sense does it make? But, you know, and like you said, we take us away. At the end of the day, it's like, I think what's most maddening is those are our parks. Those parks belong to me and you, Terry. I mean, we own them. So you're telling us we can't go into our own public park. Retarded. It's just retarded. And then you're spending the extra money. So I don't know. Me personally, it's maddening. It's frustrating, and I can't pay a whole lot of attention. I try not to the arguing. You know, there are people who are watching CNN and CNBC all day long, and these Senate hearings and this and that. I don't know how they're doing it because I can't even stand to see these people talking to each other.
Yeah. Well, I get
more or less representing me.
I get tired of watching the talking heads, you know, comment on everything with their opinions and their snide attitudes, and it's just like, you know what, really, you're no different than I am. And you're, you know, it's just, you're just an opinion, and you're coloring the way the rest of the world's going to view what's going on. So I can't watch too much of those shows.
Right. I can't watch any of them. Including the new, well, I will say this is something ironic, is our local news, you know, is on from, well, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours every evening and every early morning. And they're hardly covering this at all, the government shutdown, which I think is really interesting. I mean, they're not using it to, you know, get viewers. So that says to me, they're not milking it is what I'm saying. And if they're not milking it, CBS, NBC, Fox, and ABC, it means that people aren't interested. See, otherwise they'd be milking it and putting it all over the news. So I think citizens in general in the United States aren't interested in the topic either. I don't think they're interested. I think they just think this is ridiculous. Are you there?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's really worried about it a whole lot. I mean, I mean, they are and they aren't. I did start a new job right now. I'm doing a little bit of fundraising for environmental issues, and I've only been on the job for like 3 days. But one of the things that I find is interesting is there's already a rap raising funds about the parks being closed and saying let's put our money together and make sure that, you know, the parks stay open, because even though they're closed now, they can mine them or do whatever they want to these areas. That's all logging. That's all okay for them to do, even though they're closed. So they're wanting to make sure that that doesn't happen where our the forests get ruined or we do damage to the animals and things like this.
Sure. Well, we'll just have to see. I mean, I don't know. Like I say, with the debt ceiling coming right around the corner, that they have to deal with too. Who knows? I mean, this is something obviously, calling our senators and congressmen and women. I don't know if it helps. I mean, I've heard a lot of feedback from people who are calling in, and basically all the senators and congressmen are more interested in you calling so that they can poll their constituents, on the issues. That's it. They're just using us for data for what they need to be saying on, on the television. What people want to hear. So they're not hearing us because they want to do what we need or we want done. They're just listening so that they can balance their report, their live reporting, and say all the right things to the, majority of their constituents, whatever remarks they had either way. So I just think well, I love that the truckers are going to be going through there in a couple of weeks. So I think that'll be cool. We'll see what happens. And we're coming up on a quick break, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about, now you're doing this fundraiser real quick. I wanted to get to that in Washington. Can you give us just a little bit of feedback? Is there a dinner up there? Where's Longview?
Longview is about, right now I'm in Vancouver, Washington. So it says, according to my GPS, about 40 minutes away. So I'm thinking it's about maybe 30 miles north of the Vancouver area.
Okay.
So it's like in that area. So it's a show. It's a guy named Junior High. There's also Mark Price, who used to be Skippy on Family Ties, is on the show, and a comedian named Christine Levine, who did a tour called the Unbookables with Doug Stanhope. She was a former radio show host here in Portland, Oregon, and also is a very big Northwest headliner. So and then I'm on the bill, and there's a guy named Sean Allen Boomer, who also is on the show. They're going to have a wet T-shirt contest because it's bars for burlesque, and a burlesque show as well. So it's a whole big shebang going on.
That sounds like fun. And what's the actual venue? I mean, I know it's on Commerce Avenue, but what's the venue? Is it a club or what is it?
It's a club. It's called Sports Access.
Okay.
And so it'll be my first time there. The guy who produces it, his name is Junior High. He is also been an activist for marijuana legalization. And I believe I might have had him as one of my first guests on Hollywood Hemptress Radio.
Okay. You know what? I don't know what's going on, but you're cutting in and out, Terry. Are you there?
To do it, and I've always wanted to help out with the process. So anyway, yeah.
Okay, sorry, you're just cutting in and out, so I'm not hearing everything you're saying. But is this 360? Is that the number to the venue where people come back with Tere Joyce? And hey, listen, any donation this month, the month of October, which is very cool. Any donation this month gets you a good stellar knife, depending on the level over 25. I'm not sure what it means depending on the level over 25, because any donation will get you the knife. So maybe if you make $100 donation, you get 4 knives. I don't know. Can somebody let me know so I can clarify that with or maybe you get a more quality knife. Maybe there's more than one knife going on or whatever.
Right. That's what it is. Right.
Is that what it is? Okay. So any on the level of 25, and then over that, there's some different knives. And is there a place that we can look at these knives on Freedom Slips at all?
Not that I know of. He just.
Oh, okay. Well, we cannot view the knife, but just remember, donations are about the gift giving of a donation, not about getting the knife. If you get the knife, it's just a complete bonus. So, Terry, you're going to move around, but let's see if we can still hear you. And if you need to move or we need to reconnect with you, we'll do that too. But, let's talk about comedy.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about you and your gift, passion, and career. How'd you get started in stand-up comedy?
Well, originally I wanted to be an actress, and I was involved in theater pretty much starting out about the age of 9. So I, did a lot of dinner theater, and I studied. I was in drama in high school, and then I, was a theater arts major in college. From there, I lived in Fresno, California, and I got accepted into the Academy of Dramatic Arts in Pasadena, California. And I moved there to study acting. And right when I first moved to Hollywood, I was staying with my aunt and uncle who lived near Melrose Avenue, where all the shops and it was funky. And this was like, I'm going to age myself, but it was 1984. And I met an actress named Peggy Pope who was in the movie 9 to 5. She played the drunk woman that was that got reformed. Anyway, she said a lot of young people like to go to the improvisation on Melrose. I'll take you there. So this was in 1984 when the big comedy boom was happening, and it was like Wall Street Journal, right before Wall Street Journal came out with like businesses to invest in, were comedy clubs. They were popping up all over the country, and I was watching Jerry Seinfeld and Robert Wool and Marsha Warfield and Richard Lewis and Jay Leno would be hanging out there, and it was before he was big. None of these guys were really big names yet. And I just thought it was the coolest place I've ever been to. And every time anybody visited me from home, I go, we've got to go check out these comedians. But then one time I had a boyfriend, just one time.
Just once.
It's been many times, but he was Canadian, and I visited him in Vancouver, and he said, if you had an act and you had a gimmick, that would be your ticket into show business. And I thought it was kind of an odd comment, and I didn't know where. I go, really? I mean, like, you think I'm funny? And I did a lot of comedy parts, so I did have a natural ability for comedic delivery, and usually I was cast that way. And as I started to watch performers, I began to think, well, you know what? If I did have an act, if I did have words, I believe I could do that. And so I took a comedy class, and within about 6 months, I was a regular at the Laugh Factory doing late night spots. So it kind of happened really quickly for me in terms of people sort of saying, yeah, this person has talent. We're going to, take her on our wing and let her get on stage. As a matter of fact, the first night I ever really got laughs, I met Lenny Bruce's mother, and her name was Sally Mars, and she said, come down and sit down next to me. And she goes, you're a little bit dirty, but so is Lenny. But you have to make that choice. And I didn't really realize what she was saying to me then. I don't think it's really about dirty language. I don't think that that's what Lenny Bruce was really fighting. What he did was he stood up against the institution, and he pointed a finger at the Catholic Church and, the police and unfair, our freedom of speech. And I feel like maybe that's really the message. It's like, have you decided to be like what a comic can be, that kind of comic, or are you going to be the other kind of comic? That's kind of how I look at that now. In retrospect, I look at that connection. That's what that message is for me.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. And by the way, I used to go to the comedy club on Melrose, and the year that you were doing stuff, I'm surprised we didn't bump into each other. That's actually. I was playing the clubs and you were doing comedy. So, yes. And I used to go and I love, it was good, raw comedy. That's why I liked it.
Uh-huh.
The comedy club. Yeah, it was raw. It was really raw. And I dug that, and now, yes. And everyone, we will get to the actual raid story in a moment here. But before we get there, I want to make a comment about somebody that, made a comment earlier. Karen Kay said that it's more than just government employees that have been furloughed. Her best friend works in Cary, North Carolina, for the county, training daycare workers in best practices for special needs kids, and her job is federally funded, and she's been furloughed. So thanks for letting us know that. Yeah, it's I was asking today who exactly has been furloughed, because it's very confusing on who's not been furloughed, but thank you for letting us know that. Now, how does reality television, how is it media manipulation? How does that work?
Well, Roxy, I did do Last Comic Standing, that was the, I was on the first season and a top 10 finalist on that particular show. And that was the year that, that there was the big boom. It was 2003. So it was like Joe Millionaire and American Idol had been on for like 3 seasons. And literally, there was a big celebration that year for VH1 because with 100 reality television stars paraded during the show, and we got invited, so I got to experience that. And looking back, I didn't realize, what was really going on. A lot of us get wrapped up in, hey, you do this competition, you might get discovered, you might get to be part of this, the big career, the brass ring. There's always that sort of, and see, I feel like reality television is like Darwinism. It's an example of Darwinism. You get a group of people together, you put them through these challenges where they have to make alliances to like get ahead, but they're really not getting ahead as a group. They're really just using one another to become the top individual. And then they chop it up and call it reality television. The season that I was on, the show wasn't just a comedy competition, but it was like this sort of fishbowl existence where it was part of the drama of what we live like in the house. And I think people thought that people had to have a fascination with what is a comic really like in real life. Are they the sad clown or whatever? And the way that the show, but I think they thought we were going to be funnier, and we were funny, but it was also very mean, and it was mean spirited, and people made alliances, and the experience in some ways, that part of the experience for me was rather exhausting, I just feel that it's sending a bad message to people. There was one time I overheard a conversation, and these people were talking about reality shows, and this person is a bartender on this show and a reality show here, and this person does that, and blah, 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 blah. And I realized like that the younger generation, the people that, were maybe teenagers or they were kids then are growing up watching this kind of way of being, and I feel that I see it being emulated. In real social situations. Sometimes I feel like the comedy community that I'm experiencing where I live at now is a lot more backbiting and seems to have, or some of the mentality of the way we were on that show. Whereas I feel like, coming from the history of where I came from back in Los Angeles, there wasn't such groveling and such, like as if we only have a few acorns to go after and I have to kick you out of the way, so I'm going to be the big star.
Understood. There is a sense of camaraderie in LA. It's the big melting pot, of actors, actresses, models, musicians, comedians. I mean, as we all know, it's Hollywood, baby, And yeah. I think what you're describing is social engineering at its finest.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I do feel that it's social engineering, and that realization for me has happened to me later. And like I say, the raid was a catalyst for me to start to open my eyes to what else might be going on with Hollywood, and what is the agenda. I just got involved in a forum on Facebook last night where they're posting things about Miley Cyrus and making comments about how well, that's what women do when they want to get ahead, or that's what that's how they are. And there was just this, I don't know, it just seemed like that the focus was well, this is what women do. They use their sexuality to get a house or a home or to further their career, or eventually you get into the machine and all of a sudden you're showing your body off and blah 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 blah. And I made a comment about it, that I felt that was a negative attitude towards women in general. And then I also pointed out that that I believe that Miley Cyrus is part of the Disney military industrial complex, and that she is an MK Ultra victim, and I got called a crazy person in a Looney Tune. So I was like, well, you know what? I mean, I find it interesting that you need to insult me for my opinion when I'm simply theorizing just like you are. I'm just giving a different view, and yet you feel a reason to bully or attack whenever you mention anything that there might be some sort of government involvement or social engineering actually really existing in Hollywood.
Well, yeah, and we all know, like in Hollywood, literally, the literal geographic area of California, Hollywood, there is. Now, I knew a lot of people when I lived there. We did a lot, and you probably do as well, Terry. When you live there and work there and get some level of public interest, you start meeting lots of other musicians. It's kind of funny, you grow up as a musician for myself, and then you're surrounded by musicians. Musicians are your friends. Why? Because that's what you have in common with, or other entertainers, mostly musicians. So, it is interesting because we had a lot of really good friends who didn't buy into the quote unquote game. Yet there was an underlying, almost as if there's an underlying structure, if you will, of competitiveness. So it makes it harder and harder to be a camaraderie. And, the more people, few people get the big fat record deal and the big fat tour and this and that. Okay, so the masses never even really get the record deal. They never get that break, right? And I noticed that the quote unquote higher I climbed my ladder, me personally or my husband or what have you, the more and more that those friends that were all true comrades started to move away and do exactly what you just described with the Miley Cyrus example. Started to say, oh, what did she do? What did she do? I'm a woman, so I must have done something sexual to get the deal. Or, these are friends saying this. And you're just like, what are you talking about? So it is interesting. There's plateaus, right? There's levels in which you're acceptable if you're at one and then the more and more famous you become, and I wasn't even famous, okay? I wasn't up at the top of the famous echelon, but look at what they do. The higher you go, and then that class of citizens that never had what you have, never drove a Mercedes, never got to shop at, on Melrose at all the clothing stores, never got to walk into a Beverly Hills store or what have you. All of a sudden now, these are the same people that are turning you on, listening to your albums, going to your comedy shows, let's say, watching your movies, your blockbuster movies, renting them on Netflix. Yet on the flip side, how can those very people try to take you down? It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, but that's part of it, and I really feel that the industry actually orchestrates it in some ways. That's part of the loop. You go up and then you get torn down, and it's all about the ego. That whole world is kind of ego related, and I'm not saying that I'm not. I mean, I've been facing my own ego within the experience of touching upon some of that. And realizing that that's really an illusion. That whole red carpet, the red carpet is only the elite supposed to be standing on the red
everyone
carpet.
wants to be on it.
Yeah.
Like if you made it to the red carpet, you wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
Right? I know. It's crazy talk. Have you ever been to the Grammys?
I haven't been to the Grammys. I haven't gone to all of those parties. I mean, I've been to I guess what you would call maybe a B or C level of it, where, I was on that train where you would be at the opening night at, one of the, the Pantages, and I'd be one of the celebrities going down the red carpet, but people go, who's that really? And then you would stop and take a picture, and these online people would snap you, and and
it makes you feel weird because you're not, right? I've done the same thing, and it makes you feel like and then they take your picture, then they don't use it for anything when they find out you're quote unquote nobody,
Right.
I know, right? So it is kind of a weird thing. Oh, I can totally relate. I can totally relate. At the same time, what you were just talking about, facing your own ego.
Mhm.
I think there's a healthy ego. There's a certain amount of ego that is necessary for the business, for
Yeah.
sure. And then there's, as long as I always called it keeping my feet on the ground. You know what I mean? Anything that kind of lifted me off the ground made me feel uncomfortable anyway. And Terry, I'm sure that you're the same way.
Yeah, well, there was times where I think I lived in that world.
Mm.
I desired it a lot at one point. It was like I woke up, as a kid going, I'm going to Hollywood, which now you find out is a druid word, and it's the magician's wand, made out of the holly tree. I mean, everything you start to learn, like when you start to wake up and see what all of this really is. In some ways, I feel like I ate too much candy. you know?
Ah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I bought in, I really, that's not really what it was about. And for me, this is what I'm experiencing. It's like, oh, I was in this machine that was sort of, why did I compare myself to that? Why was that my barometer of being okay, or my qualification for success? And now that I'm at where I know the knowledge that I know now, I feel free. Plus there's the internet.
Well, yeah, I completely get what what you mean. Like all the people, and this, that fly from, come from all over the world into Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's one of the cool things. You meet people from all over the world, right? And the untainted, person that will just do anything. I mean, I was one of those people and play for free, do parties for free, play clubs for free. They even had to pay to play at one point, where you had to pay to play at the Roxy Theater. You had to
Oh
pay
yeah.
to play at the club. You know what I mean? You did anything to be on that stage. You did anything to be in front of people. And so I think it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Hollywood preys on people, Prey. They prey on people. So a lot of people are very innocent. They don't know. They just really, really believe that they're just going to be really, really big star and whatever. And then you never really make it to the inner circle.
No, I mean, but do we want to is the question.
No, no. You ever
It's
see
like,
the movie? You ever
yeah.
see the movie Eyes Wide Shut?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what
Yeah.
that inner circle is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole new religion, literally.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I think that's where I've been realizing too. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at this. This is not good. I'm actually glad that I have or journeyed as far as I have, and then been able to like not have those things happen for me, because I don't know where I would be at. Who knows what would, I don't feel I would be as healthy as I am now.
Right. Exactly. I was just going to say that I know what you mean when you said the freedom, because you're doing it because you love it. You're doing it because you're you. You're doing it because you enjoy it, and you're not doing it so that you can be in the inner circle and be it's hard to believe, people, but there are a lot of us who don't want to be billionaires.
No, I mean, but why do you have to be? I mean, like,
Why?
why?
Exactly.
I mean, why? It's like it's just I don't know. I mean, if I feel that if I have enough, if I'm doing okay, I'm not struggling, not I mean, in crisis, and if I do have a certain amount of money where I can like push that out to something good, or use it the way it's all about energy, right? It's
Right.
money's not good or bad. It's us and how we use it and what we treat it and how we like have hangups over it. It's not necessarily then of itself. And so I'm working on this. I have been a little bit cosmically restricted about my money issues, but I'm looking at it differently. And since I've been doing that, there have been some really positive opportunities that have been opening up for me, which is nice.
Very, very cool. Very cool. I
Yeah.
think this is how you keep your career, for you, Terry, anyway. It's how you keep it fresh too, because again, you're doing what you're doing you're acting, your comedy, etc. You're doing it for the love of it. And that's what we all came into entertainment. Anybody that came into entertainment at 5 and 6 and 10 years old or in high school, whatever day you arrived, you did it because you found something, you stumbled into something that you really liked to do and that you were good at. So now you get to do what you're good at, be free in it, make all the right choices, and then other opportunities, of course, present themselves, and it's all good. Success, obviously, for you is a way of life, not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Well, I feel like, it's being an artist, because a song or a joke or a bit or a movie or a documentary or what we're doing on the internet, a YouTube video, these things create feelings and emotions and awareness, and it can instill love. It can inspire people. It is part of it does make a difference in the world. It is energetically vibrating at an energy. It's causing people to think and feel or realize things and to feel connected. And the Hollywood machine knows that, and they've been doing it to perpetuate what they want in every aspect of our media. And now that we have a live forum, when you're an artist, you just we can put it on the internet now. We can put it anywhere we want to. It's reminding ourselves that we are self-generating creative spirits, and not the opposite. The power is within, not within somebody else. And frankly, like right now, and let's say that I don't want to work in Hollywood, or I think that all aspects of like what's on television or all movies are have this sinister agenda to make people go crazy. But I do believe that a lot of that is happening, and the ones who are hiring, and I think that a lot of the artists that are faced with it are selling a part of their own self to fit into that box because they're hooked in it and it's their paycheck, just like everything else that we get hooked into. So there's certain things that I feel like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to participate in it. And if I do, I feel like I'm working at Walmart, and I'm not that. And I'm not going to sell myself off like that, because at the end of the day, my soul has to look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm proud of you, or oh, I'm ascending right now, or I'm a good influence on other people, or I'm helping things. No, I'm just selling out. And I hope I stay like this.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to come up on another break in a couple, so I don't want to get into, when we get back, I definitely want to talk about the DEA raid because okay, of how immensely important it was on the road in your life. But I was going to revert back to something that you had said as well, as far as you have to look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah. Was there ever a time that you did look in the mirror and you were asking, what am I doing?
I do believe that there's been sometimes, especially like now, it seems like, I'm cleaning house, so I say, well, was I reactive there, or, am I know these are like fine-tuned, things, but I think so. I think that there was a point where, I've never doubted being, a comedian, or I don't know. I guess so. I've had moments where I've looked at myself and said, what am I doing? And then said, well, I could change this if I want to. Yeah.
Sure. Well, and a lot of really young people, it's just so clear to me, when they look in the mirror and instead of saying to themselves, I'm so glad to be me, they're saying, I suck being me and I want to be her. That's what I think. That's more about what I'm talking about, is when we all, a time in our life where we wanted to be that person, that star, Madonna, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, it is good. Even if there's a full circle within your career, that you come back around to going, hey, I actually like being me. I actually dig being Tere Joyce. I think that having a full circle within the industry is awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I think but isn't that what we're all searching for? Like whether we identify with a
The second hour with Tere Joyce. If any of you missed the first hour, you didn't miss some of the best part was about to come. Although the first hour was quite interesting as well. Listen, Revolution Radio, we are, and you've heard this a million times, you hear it all day long, but I just want to thank you because we're funded by the listeners. We wouldn't have the opportunity to be on the air if the listeners have not funded us. There would be no means and no way. Unless maybe I did what I said in the first hour, maybe I'd have to pay to play, huh? But we want to thank you very much for donating. And then in the first hour, if you missed it, there is a free gift now with a donation of $25 or more. And it's some kind of, it's a good to stellar knife, depending on the level, over $25. So in other words, if you $25, you get, a good knife. And you do $50. I don't know where the tiers are, but I'm sure they'll decide. Then you get a better knife and a better knife and a better knife. And I'm sorry I don't have any photos or any links to those knives, but you all donate without getting free knives. So I think it's interesting. Maybe one day we'll give free guns. I'm not sure if we can even do that. But anyway, thanks a lot to all the listeners. And anybody that has any questions for Tere, go ahead and drop them in the chat room. If you're listening live and you're not in the chat room, just go over to freedomslips.com, hit chat room, and you can join the chat room and ask any of the questions that you like. And Thomas, our producer, will be glad to grab those questions and bring them to Tere and I. So Tere, I know everybody's dying, including myself, because I've never personally, as we were talking about over the break, I've never heard the whole story of the DEA raid. Care to share it?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's definitely something that I never thought was going to happen to me. Well, I was working on a friend of mine invited me to do a marijuana themed show. And at first I didn't want to do it. I was like, well, it's been done before, and let's make it a broader sex, drugs, rock and roll. And, but it became about marijuana. And this was 2006. Maybe at the time, a lot of stuff was happening in California surrounding the medical marijuana dispensaries. California was the first state to legalize it for medicinal reasons. And we were the first ones to implement dispensaries or collectives where a patient can go and get their medicine. And what a collective means is that you have your doctor's recommendation. So you're a medical marijuana patient, which makes you legal to give money like a donation to the collective that grows your medicine. And so all these people kind of collectively come together, and that's how the system works. A lot of people like the federal government and even some of the city zoning feels that these are illegal storefronts doing illegal drug businesses, and so they're either raided by their own police or they're raided by the actual DEA or the federal government. Specifically, this was happening with a lot of the federal government was doing it, and it's a state rights versus federal government issue, to my understanding through the experience. Like, even though we voted on it, because it's a class 1 drug and federally illegal, it gives them the right to come in and everything, and none of it's legal according to them. And so I was just kind of going on through life. I doing the show. The show got a lot of interest. It was a little bit controversial in Pasadena. I lived in Pasadena. Pasadena is really not the little old lady from Pasadena, but they like to think they are. And we were doing it in the smaller room, in the annex. There's a big room and a smaller room, and the smaller room is known as, like, maybe sometimes the amateurs. Like, if you said you play the Ice House Comedy Club in Pasadena, they go big room or little room, and you have to go, well, I work both, but there was a reporter there in the little room, in the amateur room known as, from the Star News, and they wanted to do an article, and they go, we think it's really provocative that you're doing a show here about marijuana when the dispensaries were shut down in Pasadena. So, I said my mind about a few issues on it, and all of a sudden, Ice House Comedy Club advocates legal pot is the headline. I'm like, oh God, I'm in trouble. I get called into the office. The owner says, I need to look at your show, blah, 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 blah. So he comes and looks at the show and gets approved, and we go on, and we decide to take it to Portland, Oregon, at the Bad Dag Theater for 420 for 2007. And there was a show called the Marconi Show that was playing here, and it was a classic rock station. They sold drug detoxification products on the air, and all of a sudden, 2.5 weeks before this was going to happen, their hosts could not be on our show because CBS Radio found the subject matter to be offensive and not in line with the radio station. So I contacted some of the papers, and being that I had been on the reality show and I was kind of fresh off of it, I seemed to have I was able to push that button and get some attention. And I contacted the papers, and I said, why is this offensive? Because Oregon was first to decriminalize marijuana in 1973, and we're doing a benefit for Oregon NORML. And mind you, I kind of came into this whole experience not really being, considering myself to be a pot person or a stoner. I wasn't the stoner chick in high school. I was actually just the opposite. I wouldn't be associated with people that smoked marijuana. But, you get involved in you move to LA, you grow up, you try it, you go, oh, it's not so bad. It's no big deal. It should be legal. I think it's a medicine, whatever. I was just sort of detached from it all. And so this article ran in the Willamette Week and Weekly, and it got a big buzz, and comics got upset, and people started fighting over each other, and people dropped out of the show, and then more people came on, and I kept spinning it online and not really realizing this was like MySpace days. All of a sudden, the blog was like, don't shut down the dope show and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of sort of just playing around with what was going on. Like, wow, this has really stirred people up. And I was suggested to go do a sister article at the Pasadena Weekly, my hometown. And because they'd already done some articles on me from being on Last Comic Standing and stuff. And so I said, hey, do you want to do an article on the subject matter? And they go, yeah, we'll do an online article. Well, because of all the synergy that was going on, we get invited to be on National Lampoon Radio for 420. And I didn't have a ride. And so I asked a friend of mine, I go, will you take me to the radio station? And he worked for a doctor that does medical marijuana recommendations, evaluations. And I had to go to work with him that day. And a lot of times the buildings are set up to where there's a doctor's office in the same building, and then there's also the dispensary. So if you want to, you can go to the doctor, get your recommendation, and go upstairs or whatever and go get your medicine. So that was so I went to work with them, and I'm not gonna lie, I got done with the show. I smoked some weed, and then I went upstairs and I was drinking a cup of coffee, and somebody was like, whoa, it's a raid, and and I always whenever the DEA shows up, it's a buzzkill, so right. I was like, what's going on? They it looked just like a movie. They're coming in with their SWAT teams, and some of them come in and they're renegade and they got their little ponytails, and I went, whoa, it's the strippers, but it wasn't. And they came in and the guns came on us, and full on guns. And I've never had guns pointed at me before in my whole life. Never, ever, ever have I faced a gun. And it freaked me out. I started to cry, and I blurted out, I'm just a Canadian. I was like, I'm doing research. It's a joke, and then I yelled out credits like, I was on Last Comic Standing. I'm like, oh my God, I disgust myself right now. Did I really go there? And then there's this guy, he just gets hogtied right next to me. He's like thrown to the ground. They tie his arms, they tie his legs up, and I'm like, whoa, that just ruined bondage for me forever. And and then and finally I calm down and I get handcuffed, and a police officer comes up to me and he looks at me and he says, he goes, where's your purse at? And I go, I twist my head around trying to point towards it. I go, it's over there. And he takes out my wallet and looks at my license, and he's like, is everything on here accurate? And I'm like, yeah, except for the weight. I'm about 10 pounds off. You know how that is. And he didn't think that was funny. And, we all get put into like this, they take us into this room, and we're all handcuffed, and we're all sitting in chairs. And, the police officer is they're not the police, but the feds are lined up looking at us, and we're looking at them. And then somebody says, I'd like to have a drink of water. And then the feds go, well, if we give you water, we have to give everyone else here water. And then somebody else says, I'd like some water. And then we're like, yeah, we want water. We want water. We want water. And, then we're like yelling out things to them like, why don't you, arrest the heroin addicts and the tweakers? And then they're like, because marijuana is against the law. And it was just humorous to me. I was astounded that this was even happening. And I thought, wow, these guys are just bullying us. There's no reason for them to be doing what they're doing. And I really had an epiphany. There was a point where I was handcuffed and I was looking around and I was like, man, what is going on with my life right now? Because it was like the controversy with the paper and, the comics being mad at each other, and certain venues were threatening to close me down if I went to the press. And now I'm in the raid and I'm being handcuffed. And I looked around and I went, this isn't an accident. Like I'm supposed to see this. I'm supposed to observe this. And this was like kind of like my own, I felt like my own soul was, I was getting in touch with. I was going, whoa, this is really trippy. And I also felt that part of myself actually realized I'd been asleep. And I went, oh my God, how did it get this bad? Like we're really being oppressed right now. And I realized that, it was just like being jerked out of like your dream, going, wake up. This is like what's going on here. Like my toe is being pinched or something. And I did a lot of praying. I said, look, I just want to get out of here. I don't want to I wasn't really worried about being arrested. I was more worried that there was going to be an accidental shooting or somebody would do something stupid and someone would have been injured. I was really frightened for my life. And I never had really felt that way before, and so that it all went down. I mean, and eventually at the end of the day, I shook the police officer's hands and, the feds' hands, and I go, thanks for giving me 30 minutes of new material. And, we were like pals at the end of the day, well, where are you going to be playing at? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it was weird because it's kind of like, they're kind of like sitting on, they're doing their job. And we're over here doing what we believe in. And somewhere in between all there's still a connection of person to person. Like, I'm on the side of the fence, but, I still maybe would, I feel that he probably maybe would show up at a show, which was kind of odd. And he probably has. No, right. But yeah. So then after I got
done with the feds are people too, right?
Right, they're people too, and maybe that's like one of the things that, for a long time, I felt really angry, and it really took me a while to make it funny and to find the jokes in there because I was just so shocked that it happened. Like I felt. Well, I voted for this. Like, how could you put guns on me when I vote for something? Like, something's really wrong with America. And it really affected me that way. But looking back now, I've had other run-ins with the feds too. It's not my only run-in so far. But there is a point, like, you do make a case. If you do stand in front of them and say, look, I believe this, I thought this was going on, I don't need any disrespect, I'm only living according to the law as I think I'm living according to the law, they tend to like recognize that. There is a point of clarity in there, and that point somewhat gives me a sense of hope that maybe they're not so much against us as we feel that they are. We have to remember that the opposition is also, there's layers of gray and shades of gray and white all in all of it. And so I think that's another awareness or another layer of my own observation on the event.
Yeah, right on. I can see where you would be scared. I was going to ask you, how did it unfold after that? Were you ticketed, or did you have to go to court, or?
No, I mean, like, they asked me for, first of all, they did take a picture of me. I say it's a picture because, that's how my head thinks. It was actually like a mugshot. And, and then I smiled, and then they go, "This is a serious photo." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Okay, I'll be serious. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for smiling. I guess that's not allowed here." And and then they'd say things like, they go, "Well," they go, "Do you have any aliases?" And I go, "Well, my name is Tere Joyce. That is my alias." I go, I'm on Facebook." And they go, "We don't do Facebook." I'm like, "The hell you don't." You're lying to me again. And and then they just let me go. I mean, the main guy sat down with me and he says, "So why are you here?" And I go, "I needed a ride." All right. I'm just, I was doing a show and here I am. And he's like, and he goes, and then he looked at me and he goes, "Do you smoke marijuana illegally?" And I'm thinking, well, yeah, duh. What do you think I'm sitting here for? Like, if I looked at him and go, "No, not at all. I've never done it illegally," I would be telling the biggest lie ever. It's like, have you ever told a lie? "No, my nose is going to grow." I'm like,
Right.
I go, "Well, on occasion, yes." And he goes, "Well, that's the most honest thing anybody said here today. Go ahead and check out." And so I left, and then I called the Pasadena Weekly, and I said, "I was just in a raid right now." And they go, "We want to see you right now. Get in here." And I'm like, I go in there, and the editor was pro marijuana legalization. So, we go and they take us out to this place called the 35er, which is people call the 30 Diver because it's like on the oldest bar in Old Town Pasadena. And, all these young journalists had their little notebooks out and everything. And I, told them the story. And then I ended up on the cover of like the Pasadena Weekly with the American flag behind me and the words "Bungalows of Justice," and how a DEA raid turned me into a missionary for medical marijuana. So, my parents are really proud of me at that point,
Sure. It's everything they ever wanted you to grow up to be.
Right. Yeah. I could be smoking. I'm smoking weed. Like, I am like blowing marijuana smoke in the air. Like, oh, wow. And so, I was out, and there was really no way of going back. And I kind of tripped out on that a little bit because all of this stuff happened in about a 2.5 week time span. And I had just found The Secret, and and that when that was all happening, I put like a check for a certain amount of money for the dope show on my computer, and I thought I was manifesting, like this other dream because I was still living in there, and this is what manifested, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? I wasn't, what is this? It seemed like as if there was like a synchronicity to it. Like there was like this happened and this happened. And it was like a little bit of a blueprint, like as if somebody had like written a story. And I was like, well, this is weird. And I kind of like looked at the photo and I went, oh, this is giving me a weird feeling. I just had a weird feeling about it all. Like I had premonitions a little bit, like I didn't think I was going to be just myself on the cover, but then I think water is it's an energy, and so sometimes when I bathe, I create and see things, and so I saw it. I know it's just me, and I saw the cover before the cover was actually really there. And then I ended up, kind of like it caused a lot of animosity between people, between my personal relationships, which was rather upsetting for me at the time. And my friend that I was doing the show with, we broke up basically. We were not lovers or anything like that, but is she still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I was looking at, and so, I kind of like that night after this, our show happened in Portland, a friend of mine made some pot brownies that had like, I don't know, had like an 8 in each one. I didn't realize it. I was really a lightweight. I'm still a lightweight. I can't do a whole lot. And a little bit goes a long way for me. And I ate 2 of them. And I just had it was like a shamanic vision. I tripped, and I had never really tripped the way I tripped before. And I felt, I heard people, I heard voices. I had images showed to me telepathically. I saw a blueprint of stuff, and I don't know if at the time I didn't really realize that what was happening with me. There was actually maybe channeling something or seeing something, and it was the plant that kind of like smoothed or opened the pathway for me to be able to access that. And then I saw that it wasn't an accident, that there was a blueprint, and every little step that I'd taken so far in my life had led me into the process of what all of this was. And then I woke up and dyed my hair red. it was pretty intense.
What was it before?
Blonde.
It was blonde. And red, like fire engine red?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like I saw the burning bush, I guess, or something. And I went back blonde again, but because reds are really hard to keep.
Yes, they are. But so this like opened up like a whole field of vision. Really, that's the best way to say it. The whole field of vision. You saw the world. It sounds like you saw you from that day on. You saw the world differently. And it sounds like you even saw you saw the collective, and then you saw the separation. It's all in once, which is really hard to digest all at once. And so with that in mind, this is where your marijuana activism kicked in. I mean, sounds like this is right at this juncture.
Yeah, I mean, there was a call to action. To do something, and that I had felt a real sense of like, this is it, it's showtime. I mean, this is really showtime. And it's been it's bumpy in it, and then but I kept going. And then, I also became concerned about other things. I started to become aware of other things, like, for example, the Illuminati, or shadow government, and, the esoteric, aspect to everything. And I seemed to, and another thing that tipped me off to this was I had a friend in my life that came back into my life at this point, who actually became somewhat of a mentor. And, there was a point where I said, well, I feel like I've known you in another life. And he goes, well, we've even been extraterrestrial before. And I thought, I didn't flinch at that. I didn't go, oh, well, that's impossible. I went, oh, yeah, I can see that. I feel that. And then from there, it seemed like a lot of information seemed to come to me online. And I began to really explore a lot of different things. And so, I mean, it was the gateway. I mean, marijuana is a gateway drug. That's not a joke. I mean, that,
Right.
Right.
No, for all the right reasons.
And then again, you find out that a lot of these plants are, I mean, it falls in the category of mushrooms and ayahuasca and DMT and all those kind of things that, do expand your consciousness and maybe cause evolutionary thought to happen. Then I started to become interested in Terence McKenna, and even Bill Hicks based his drug material on the theory of, Terence McKenna, that, it's part of our evolution. Like, these plants are part of our evolution. And I'm not saying that they're right for everybody, but if you look through history, the shamans use them. I mean, it's in the Kabbalah. It's, I think Madonna came out and said that she smokes a phallic bong now, and I'm like, wow, why is she coming out talking about this? Like, because I have a feeling that mainstream media is gearing up to take it off the class 1 drug, and make it a class 2 or 3. And then that way only the pharmaceutical companies are going to own it. And it's going to be taken, like the molecules are going to get changed, and it's not going to be the plant pure like it is. It's not going to help people heal. It's not going to help people, it's going to, be Monsanto is going to take.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say they've got GMO weed now. I mean, this is literal. I'm being literal. It's not a joke. And yeah, that'll kill you. Now that one will kill you.
Yeah. I mean, and then you start to realize that, when you go back, if you read Jack Hare's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, which is like a famous book, Jack Hare is a legend in the theory of like why marijuana is illegal, you'll realize that the Rockefellers are there. They were part of the propaganda, and so was J.P. Morgan, so was, DuPont, so was, William Randolph Hearst. I mean, all these players that are connected to the Federal Reserve and to the bankers and to everything else is actually really, like marijuana and the cannabis movement is also, part of the whole big picture that's going on.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
The other thing, Terry, is I'm being cautious about not stepping on you because of the little bit of lag time that you and I are getting. I was going to say, anything that you and I can make money on, the feds want it. I mean, that's all there is to it. Number two is every state is, how the feds are two-way in our business anyway. So, I mean, power to the people who, they won on states' rights. They won on, the medicinal, stores and so forth and clinics and whatever, for marijuana. And, and I heard a guy from the federal government, and he said, because the federal government, you said it right, doesn't recognize this as anything but a class 1 drug, that he wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't continue to go into states that have legalized it and bust everybody. And it's like, what is this right hand not talking to the left? I mean, if we've all in certain states have passed it, I mean, Washington State, this. I mean, it's legal. It's legal. You don't even need a medicinal marijuana card. It's legal in Washington State. I got a bunch of friends that, don't trust the legality of it either. Trust me. Uh-oh, Terry. I think we lost our Miss Terry. Yep, I see a little button. Oh, what should we do? Thomas, should we try to call her back?
I can't do nothing until her picture disappears.
Till her picture disappears? Uh-oh. And we're back with Tere Joyce, and Terry, hey, if you can't hear, I'll just tell you right now. Okay, you can hear now. And yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so if you decide you can't, then drop the call on your end, and we'll call you back.
Okay.
Are you there? Okay, cool. So let's see. What's Hollywood Hemptress, our show? What is that?
Well, it's a show that I created first I started it on the New Dissonant Radio. I got invited to do Cannabis Times Radio for 6 months. And a friend of mine started his own network, and he goes, why don't you just come over here and do your own show? So we started to do a radio show about it on the internet. And then I had, different guests. I had some interesting guests. One of my favorite was George Clayton Johnson, who wrote the movie Logan's Run, and also the original Ocean's 11. He co-wrote the stories.
Oh, cool.
Those 2 films. Also was part of creating the first episode of Star Trek, and he's was a good longtime friend of Jack Hare, very interesting man. So I did a 2-hour special interview on him. Just kind of played around with, being part of the internet media for a while. Then I moved. I left Hollywood. I kind of got tired of all the concrete and needed to see some more trees. And I don't know, with being able to have the internet and creating your own content, I didn't feel as bound as staying in the Hollywood area anymore. And so I came up here. And I did a web series of the show on Atomic Comedy Network for about almost a year. And now I'm taking it to another radio station, which it's Heart Radio, I believe. My friend just invited me to do it, and I feel lame that I don't have the name of the exact station, but if you follow me on Facebook, Tere Joyce, Tere Joyce, or friend request or like my Hollywood Hemptress Hour page or my Freedom of Joyce page, then I will keep you posted on what that station's going to be. But yeah, I'm going to go back into doing that show again as well. And
so you do comedy on the radio?
Well, mainly some of it's comedic. I mean, like with the show, I have funny guests. I've got a character. A friend of mine does this character called Sergeant Detective Harry Palmer Jr., retired, and we kind of play off of each other for a while. It's an improv character that he does, which is, I think, is very funny. And I work on being funny. I mean, the monologue or the opening part of it is satirical. A lot of my guests are comedians. And musicians and other people that are in the entertainment business who are willing to come out and talk about the subject matter. And then real activists, real, dispensary owners, people that are, on trial because they were a grower, or, I like to, capture people that have their own organizations, their own activism, around the subject matter. Got to have a woman named Cheryl Schumann on the show too, as well. She did a lot of the branding actually she worked in Hollywood. She did branding for eyewear, like when all the stars, Tom Cruise, were wearing all those eyeglasses and stuff. And she worked for product placement in films, and she got really sick with cancer and was almost going to die. Basically, they said you need to get your affairs in order, and she didn't die. And she started to use cannabis oil treatment, and she's still alive today. And so she's been doing a lot of work in mainstream television right now, bringing there's a group called Marijuana Moms, moms that medicate, and organizations such as this, and they've covered these topics on the air, as well as giving cannabis treatments to children that were seriously ill with leukemia or cancer. And one of the little girls is actually her cancer went into remission after using it. So, kind of work on those kind of topics and just to spread information and to keep people informed about what is happening with our legislature, what this means to what's going on with our government. I mean, the main thing that I'm really wanting to message I want to get there is you may think, badly, or it's a drug, or you might have your own personal opinions, or you might even find it that you can't handle having it because you are addicted to it. And I'm not saying it's not positive all the time. It's not for everybody. But the point of the matter is that there's all these problems that are surrounding it that are also problems that are part of our own freedom issues in this country. And that, if we can legalize this and manage it and, have hemp and take control out of the big, if we know that there's big corporations that are just waiting to swallow this up, and that it wants to enslave us even more, then maybe we have a shot at actually creating another paradigm and a different kind of business that has maybe more love, intent, and compassion surrounding it.
Right. I'm going to drop a link in for everyone who's listening right now. It's in the chat room. You want to take a look at this. I'm over at the Hollywood Hemptress Hour, one word. I love it. And I'm looking at the poster, Ganja Palooza.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. We did a show in Richland, Washington to celebrate 420 because Washington's one of the first states to legalize it. And I think it's the first one that actually implemented it into law. I think Colorado's vote came in first and then Washington, implemented. So I was in the impression that, that the whole state was all, behind it, and not necessarily so. And again, we ended up getting the radio block from it. There was a radio station that was out there, and they used one of the Furry Freak Brother cartoons on it, which was a 70s marijuana cartoon. And one of the characters goes, "It's better to have good dope and no money than have money and not good dope," or something like that. And they had that on their website, for their classic rock station, but the station wouldn't allow us to work with advertising like they normally did for shows that had been produced out there that my partner had already produced, because of the fact that they found the word ganja was offensive. And which is interesting because ganja is actually a Sanskrit word, and it's from India. And India, like really, cannabis has theoretically been centered coming from India, and they even give hashish to their gods, which I've always wondered. Like after 3 or 4 days, can you just walk up and go, "Hey, do you think he's going to finish that? Can I have it?" But this is like that's where it all comes from, and it's just. Yeah, I don't know. It just goes on. And so that happened. And we kind of went just sort of broke about it. The show left me. It was a financial loss. But for me, it was very eye-opening to see still a media shutdown over it, as well as a more conservative community around the subject matter. And it's right around the area where it's Richland, the Tri-Cities, and that's the area where the atomic bomb was worked on and partly created. So I find it interesting that's kind of like the error in what's happening, and that was the most restrictive part of Washington that didn't want to legalize it. I'm just making that correlation. I don't know if it really means anything, but I think it's all.
I think it is interesting. At the I think there are no coincidences, and that's the 420 that you were talking about early, 420 stand-up comedy show.
Yeah.
And now I know it's actually called 420. So very interesting. So you were out at Tri-Cities, Kennewick, right?
Yes, Kennewick, Pasco.
That's a great place for shows, and I played out there. I played out there with B.B. King and, oh my God, a number of blues artists about 10 years ago. And I wonder if you played the same outdoor venue.
Well, I have played there before. I've been at Joker's Comedy Club a couple of times, and there was. It was at the M Hotel Bar and Grill is where we did it.
This was an outdoor thing. It was a pretty big festival is what it was. So, but nevertheless, interesting that Kennewick is kind of houses all that kind of stuff, like music, comedy, all of it. It's a cool place. They've really got their act together, so to speak. So it is a good location. But I also think that is interesting that, I mean, really, there are no coincidences when things just get flat cut out. Technology suddenly is not working. By the way, this poster with you for the Ganjapalooza, you are on the left. I want everybody to take a look at this. It's really funny. I put the link into the chat room. The Statue of Liberty, Terry, holding the ganja plant. Well, you're holding something, and it's kind of connected to the leaf. But don't you think Jay London on the right looks a little Gene Simmons?
Yeah, he does.
I mean, at first I was like, is that Gene Simmons? Yeah, he looks just like Gene Simmons. You guys got to take a look at this. And, of course, this already happened in April, and I guess it turned out okay at the end of the day, right?
Well, it did in the sense that, I wrote it. I did another, video about it, and it's also been a bit of a catalyst for me to step into a new direction in some ways, because I know I'm want to do a one-woman show called Freedom of Joyce, and I'm working on that, and then also doing a web series about the subject matter of freedom, and then having the marijuana issue be a part of that umbrella. One of the things that I'm finding, and I didn't start out like as a marijuana comic per se, and I like serving that issue, but in some ways I find right now the subject matter is becoming limited to me in terms that I'm beginning to want to talk about other things that are part of the real root of what this issue, the marijuana issue is, and I'm wanting to expand who I reach and why I'm able to reach them. And sometimes if you're always wearing this marijuana leaf around you, it's sort of like having this scarlet A on your chest all the time. It's like it automatically it puts you in a category of judgment. And I guess it doesn't matter if you're going to talk about freedom, or if it doesn't matter about there's always a box or a label that people are always wanting to that they're going to, we don't want you at our party because you do this or that.
Right.
But I don't really feel like just wearing it around around my around my neck all the time, and so I'm wanting to like push out larger, because I'd rather be able to be able to talk about something and then maybe like bringing their mind into the subject matter through another way, rather than just going da 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 da, here it is. You don't hold out your every card at every moment, in a sense.
Well, yeah, and some people do, and it's kind of I call it sort of a religious thing, because we all run when we see that person, right? It's like, oh no, here they come, because they're just going to shove it down our throats, So no, that ain't cool. And I'm glad that you're very discerning about it and realizing, you can't be 24/7 on, like, did you know about marijuana? Did you know about this? Did you know about that? Because after a while, I mean, really, and no one will listen to you after a while is what's going to happen. So there are venues for this, the opportunity to speak out. And then when you're saying you want to go further, reach further, I do see that your future site of something quite cool, it says, coming, freedomofchoice.com. What will Freedom of Choice focus on?
Well, it's going to be, I'm very interested in, just the subject matter of freedom and what that means to myself, and also to other people, and what it means to collectively, with our government. I mean, there's a lot of people right now all over the world that are fighting for freedom. And, there's been Occupy happened, there's protesting going on everywhere. There's people that are feeling like, hey, I'm a sovereign being and I have unalienable rights, and they're universal. And, I'll be talking, doing my own little clips and like small short videos of me doing my own commentary on camera and social networking that, and I'll be blogging that, and I'll also bringing up footage of interviews with people, different causes, different things, and keeping myself just a voice or an outlet for that exploration to happen. And then I'm going to work it into my own personal story, in a one-woman show, like, talking about the raid, talking about other aspects of my life that I'm looking to liberate personally, in the humor and the journey that I have in that process.
Absolutely, that's very cool. And speaking of Occupy, you did something with LA Occupy, did you not?
I did.
Occupy LA. Sorry.
Occupy LA. I camped out, like, I wasn't there like every day, and I did camp out on it. I got involved in the media department, and so I started to hybrid my own radio show and my blog and stuff like that to what was happening with Occupy. And also the Occupy 420 kind of came from my friend DeJay, and who has the Patient Advocacy Network. We were at the time collecting signatures to take to Governor Brown to ask them to, not have our dispensaries raided, because until that time, at the same time Occupy happened, the James Cole memorandum came out, where when Obama first took office, Eric Kohler announced, as long as like California's, doing state guidelines, we're asking the feds not to raid them. And then all of a sudden at that same time, they said, we no longer support this anymore. Marijuana is still an illegal drug. It has no medicinal value, and we're going to come after and raid you now. And Occupy broke out at the same time as kind of coinciding to what that happened. So there was this first involvement of us, like, doing petitions and bringing our cause to that particular cause. And then a lot of my friends who were activists, marijuana activists, were also occupying. And I had one of the girls on my show, her name is Mrs. Melissa Ballin. She's a documentary filmmaker, and she goes, oh, well, come to our tent, come join us. And I'm like, okay, here I am. And, I showed up, and she goes, you can stay in my tent. And, I think she got kind of drank a little bit too much that night. She forgot she invited me. So when I woke up the next day in her tent, she goes, what are you doing here? And that's how it all kind of started. Not to be, terrible about it. But yeah, I ended up becoming involved in the media, enough so that I got wind that I was on a list.
Oh, no way. What kind of list were you on?
Whatever, DEA, FBI, I don't know. I mean, like, a friend of mine's mom works for the 1% or something. And like when it was all said and done, he goes, you know what? He goes, they have photos of you. You're on the list. And he goes, maybe you should change your hair color, not drive your car around here. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit for a moment.
No doubt.
But then I joked about it and I go, oh, I always wanted to make the list, you know? Yeah.
Right.
So here we go.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, you know, we should all get on the list. You know, and then what are they going to do about it? But yeah, I can see where that would freak you out. Like, you know, ooh, right. I'm on the list. I mean, you know, what if you're trying to get on a plane one day, you know, do a show in New York or something, and all of a sudden you're on the list and you can't get on the plane.
Right. Well, you know, it is kind of a concern. You know, I have some friends. I made some friends in India basically because of the fact that of the association with the cannabis plant and there and so, you know, one of my friends goes, hey, you know, if you come to India and we can, you know, meditate and smoke cannabis in the Himalayas. And I go, oh, it sounds so great, you know, and so I said, well, let me check into it. And he goes, well, I got to get a passport. And he goes, oh, are they going to give it to you because you were in Occupy? And he said that to me. And I go, well, why wouldn't they give it to me? And there is that kind of stigma of, you know, possibly that they had watched us. I mean, I had, you know, there were certain people that came up and said that some people in black cars pulled them over and, you know, talked to them and threatened them and did certain things to them or whatever. And that a lot of people felt that we were surveyed and that maybe that it was even infiltrated by their own. I mean, there was one night where there's a guy that I had become friends with and I thought he was kind of flirting with me. I don't know, you know, and I had given him my number, and the day that they got raided, I didn't go because I figured like if I've already had that happen, I've already karmically I don't feel like I have to go back and do that.
Right.
And the day that I did go there, they didn't about 1,000 people made a human chain around City Hall and they couldn't get into the occupier, so they put it off for a few days. And I was there. Of course, the day that it is raided, I'm there. And my friend, you know, who works for the 1%, whose mom works for the 1%, wasn't there. And I said, where are you? And he goes, I'm sick and you need to get out of there. President Obama just signed the NDAA bill, which means that we could like be pegged as domestic terrorists and it's not going to be your normal arrest. And they have buses and they're going to take everybody. And I was like, okay, I'm out. And I started to leave and I did leave. And this one guy was kind of checking in with me in between those times between us like leaving for Thanksgiving and the actual raid. He's like, oh, so what's going on? So what's going on at the camp? And he was like, you know, asking me a lot of information. I go, where are you? And he goes, I'm at Joshua Tree or I'm at 29 Palms. And I know there's a military base there because I performed there before.
Oh, wow.
So I went, military. And then, you know, there was like a message that he made on my machine when I got done. He goes, oh, Terry, I was wondering, are you okay? Because I heard on the dispatch that you were there. And I was like, okay, what? And I played the message twice. I go, what dispatch? Like, what dispatch is he talking about? And I called him up and I said, what are you talking about? Like, you heard me on the dispatch. I go, where are you? And he goes, I never said that. I go, yeah, you did. It's on my voicemail. I go, where are you? And I go, what, are you at the military base? Is that where you're at on 29 Palms? He goes, oh, you're crazy. I go, am I? I go, don't ever call me again. This conversation is over.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty heavy, actually. Hey, I just want to tell you, somebody, a gal named DeBee, just posted like a full poster of the part of the poster of you that has where you're the Statue of Liberty. She posted the whole thing on my page. You might want to take a look at it. It's really cool. Is this your poster?
Yeah, I mean, like I took that photo when I was doing the dope show. Again, it was one of those things that
it's
I saw.
Awesome.
I was bathing. It was one of those visions, and I went, "Oh, that really makes a statement." And so, a friend of mine's a photographer, and we shot it. And I
love it. It's very cool. She said, "Great show, both of you," and she posted it. And under the picture of Tere Joyce, who's missing one part of her dress there, so we got a part of a body exposed, but not really because it's got a marijuana leaf over it, so it's quite fitting. And she's holding a wonderful big bong. And underneath it, it says, if the message being sent is that women have to exploit their bodies and sexuality to further their career and stay on the radar of pop culture, then how does a woman get anyone to pay attention to her words or art without such exploitation? So I have decided to use my sexuality to put focus on social and political change for the hope of a future of freedom and love. When you channel exhibitionism in a positive way, it becomes art. And I must say, I have to agree with you, Miss Terry, because I did an album called Save Yourself back in 95, and I had an artist come in and paint my entire body nude, and I am nude on the front cover. He painted it, kind of like what this is going on here in your picture, and the record labels flipped out. You can't use that. You can't. And it was so innocent. I mean, it was a painting of me nude, and it didn't really show anything, but they were, you can't do that. See, it's very odd, isn't it?
It is odd. It's odd, and and I do have my own inner dialogue about what I feel is right and not right.
Right.
Our feminism. I mean, one time I saw a psychic, and there was a friend of mine, and she just said something. She said, you're not using your sexuality, because you're not bringing it into your work. And she said, that's part of your gift. That's part of the reason. It's part of your charisma. It's part of what is. And you need to like incorporate that. And it was weird. I didn't know what that meant really then.
Right.
And there is a part of me that says, no, I don't want to exploit myself. I don't exploit myself. But at the same time, you are working in an industry like that. And there is the goddess energy. There is this.
Absolutely.
And it's like, it's all part of being feminine.
This picture, anyone will agree. Go to my Facebook page. Look at this picture of Terry. It is completely, it's funny. It's sweet. The look on your face is just like, hey, I want to join you for a beer kind of look. Like, it's so innocent is what I'm saying. It's absolutely innocent. And anybody, this wouldn't make the cover of Playboy, okay? No offense, my sweetness.
Yeah.
But neither would mine have. But I'm saying it's innocent, and it's the intention behind it. So, it's very cool. It's very cool. We have a minute. I don't know. We should be coming up on a hard break. Any last words of wisdom, my friend? Terry? Uh-oh. Where's Terry? Terry.
I'm right here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I was like, Terry. I'm saying the show's gonna be over in like 20 seconds. Any last words of wisdom?
My last words of wisdom would be, I guess, just trust your inner instincts about everything that you listen to, and because that's what I'm doing.
Explaining to us. It was the beginning of her awakening, and she realized that her involvement with the cannabis plant was not an accident, but was in fact part of the blueprint of her incarnation. She saw that the cannabis hemp plant had been suppressed and that its freedom was directly connected to the life and health of the planet. She began to work with a nonprofit, the Patients Advocacy Network, which she currently serves as one of the board members. She has produced, hosted, and performed her stand-up comedy for fundraisers for those who needed legal defense funds, i.e. growers, and California medical marijuana dispensary operators who have been targeted and raided by the DEA, feds, local police, or IRS. She's helped create the first medical marijuana float to be entered in the West Hollywood Gay Pride Parade. Yay! The controversial float made the judges laugh and ended up winning the coveted Butterfly Award for the most colorful and original float. I love that. There's so much more that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'd rather we hear it from Tere Joyce's mouth. We're going to cover a whole lot. How did she get started in stand-up comedy? How reality television is media manipulation. How the DEA raid was a catalyst to evolution of Terry's personal path. Shows that are upcoming that Terry's involved in. We're going to cover the gamut here tonight, and we better get busy because we've only got, an hour? No, 2 hours. A little bit less than 2 hours. Welcome to the show, Tere Joyce. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I've really, really been looking forward to doing your show. I'm a big fan, and I listen to your guests are phenomenal. As a matter of fact, a couple of your shows have actually gave me pre-info to an experience that I had as well, which I find kind of interesting. So it's I just love it. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. The feeling's mutual. You know, just before we get in on, you know, all of your activism and what you've been doing, would you just comment on this government shutdown just for a moment? Your take on it at all? Or is it affecting your life, or is it a comedy show for you? I mean, what does it look like from where you're standing?
Well, I find it interesting that what programs are who is being affected by the cut. I found it rather disturbing that the president. The only thing because I don't have television, so I do, but I don't.
Of Bette Midler, very funny people. Terry is right there in the company of those that I have mentioned. And tonight, listen, she's doing a benefit at the Sports Axis for breast cancer awareness right after the show tonight. So can you believe it? She made the show. And when I asked her, geez, why didn't you just cancel the show? You got to get over and do something much more important. She said, because I booked you first. So she's not only a well-known comedian in entertainment, she also keeps her word. How about that? Interesting. I love that. Let's see. So I'm going to put a link into the chat room and the address in Longview, Washington, where Terry is going to be raising, my old stomping grounds, by the way, where she's going to be raising some money for breast cancer. And if you can't make it, or you live in Washington and you can't make it, pass it on to somebody in Washington who can make it. I'd really appreciate that. Tere Joyce was your typical American stand-up comedian whose goals, life, and career existed in the matrix of Hollywood. No doubt. I can relate. Then one day she found herself staring down the barrel of a gun during a federal DEA raid in California at a medical marijuana dispensary. The experience was a catalyst for Terry to examine her government, politics, media, cannabis legislation, and what she refers to as the 1%. Her creative awakening has inspired her to become an art activist. We're meeting a lot of them. On Monday's show, Mia Farrelletto is the same thing, an art activist. And she's currently creating a one-woman comedy show and coinciding web series entitled Freedom of Joyce. I love it. Freedom of Joyce. Get it? Freedom of choice, freedom of Joyce. Love it. Okay. After her experience with the raid, Terry experienced the beginning of her awakening and realized that her involvement with the cannabis plant was not an accident, but was in fact, part of a blueprint of her incarnation. It's one of those things, people, that every step you take in life leads you to the next, yes? And everything you ever learned in life gets you to where you are right now. It's why we are who we are in the moment from everything that's come before us. And I can see that this is what Terry is, 95, 96. But today I know that 800,000 workers are on furlough, costing the U.S. economy $300 million a day. Now, you might ask the question, if you lay off and don't pay 800,000 workers, all right, how is that costing us? You'd think it would be saving us billions of dollars, right? How's it costing us $300 million a day? I gave you the link. You can take a look at it and find out for yourself. It's quite interesting. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service forecast offices all over the county, Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, as well as the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, are all continuing to work, even though they are not getting paid right now. As well, NOAA websites are continuing to function through the shutdown, and many workers have been laid off, and some of these organizations are on what you call skeleton crews. Interesting, isn't it? They're working, and they know they're not going to get paid. Now, some of you have asked the question as well, and I'll try to answer it best I can. if the government opens back up in a couple of weeks, which I seriously doubt it, because they now are focused on the debt ceiling. Don't forget they kicked the can all the way down the road in 2013 regarding the debt ceiling and raising the debt ceiling. So it's just going to be interesting how this all plays out. But will those workers get reimbursed or retro pay? That's not even on the table. So I don't know if they're just basically working for free. But if I were you, I'd call my congressman, I'd call my senator, because they're not included in the furloughs, and they won't be, and they continue all the way up to the president to get paid. It's just a very interesting debacle, if you ask me. The FBI releases a chilling video footage, CCTV of Navy Yard shooter. Remember that Navy Aaron Alexis attack? Remember that? He went in and shot a bunch of people. I believe it was like 16 or 17 people right down the street from the White House. I get tired of hearing these stories about happenings like this right down the street from the White House. But anyway, I'm going to give you a YouTube video. You can check it out later. Tell me if you think, supposedly this is the FBI camera inside the building showing the shooter bringing in a bag, going through some doors, going around corners. It looks very Hollywood to me. I'm saying thumbs down. I don't believe that this is an FBI. I haven't been able to look into it any further today. Sorry, but I haven't been able to investigate it. But you tell me if you think that this looks authentic, because I don't. I ain't buying it. Which, if it was authentic, it answers the question of how this guy who worked at the Navy shipyard actually got into secured areas of the base with a gun, a pretty large gun. Anyway, raw DC police car slams into barriers at Capitol Hill yesterday. Here's another one. Tell me thumbs up or thumbs down. Personally, I think this one's real. It was shot by somebody who was on the sidelines. There's a lot of swearing in it, so if you're allergic to swearing, don't look at it. But I'd like your feedback from the chat room on these two videos. I want to know if they're believable, if you think they're real, or you think they're a hoax. I think the raw DC police car slams into barriers at Capitol Hill is absolutely real. And I've got one more for you. The entire House of Representatives gives a standing ovation to cops after killing unarmed mother yesterday. Take a look at this. Now, this isn't a hoax. This isn't not real or real. I want you to know this made me sick. I hope that, crossing my fingers, if anyone want to look into this, it's called Entire House of Representatives Gives Standing Ovation to Cops After Killing Unarmed Mother, with this incident that happened yesterday. It's real footage, but is it in the context? Now, if you, 51 seconds into it, the senator actually says the context. Then there's about, a minute of a standing ovation. And then there's a dissertation afterwards of how they did the right thing. The cops did the right thing for the protection of the White House, the protection of everybody who works in government there in D.C. You tell me what you think about it. And that's all three. And you can tell me any time. You can write me at info@thetruthDenied.com if you want to talk about this later. And you can contact me on my Facebook page, Roxy Lopez, The Truth Denied. Now let's get to my guest. I just have to say thank you so much to my guest this evening, Tere Joyce, comedian Tere Joyce. This is going to be a fun show. Tere's a serious lady. She's also a comedian, and she can turn things that are pretty heavy into something that's much lighter that we can all laugh at, which I can certainly appreciate. Some of my favorites in the past, as you all know, is George Carlin. And, of course, the wonderful Sandra Bernhard. Where did she go? I know where George is. He's watching us all from above. But I don't know where Sandra Bernhard is. But anyway, a couple of my favorites. And, of course, my old-time favorite that had me in stitches way back in the day and can still do it today is Lucille Ball. One of my favorite female comedians. And, of course, I love
Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And welcome. Sorry, I've got two phones ringing at the very moment. I tried to stay muted for that. It's always crazy around here at the Truth Denied DEA. We've got a wonderful guest. It's the perfect evening for it, being Friday. Tere Joyce is our guest this evening. I'm going to bring her on in just a moment. Let me catch you up on the news. Why is it so difficult to end the government shutdown? And many have asked, the last time there was a partial shutdown of the federal government, there was a Democrat in the White House. Interesting, isn't it? And Republicans controlled the House of Representatives. That's where the similarities end, though. If you want to take a look at the rest of this story, I'll drop a link in for you. It's quite interesting. The government was closed in 1994, and I just don't recall it myself. It was a non-event for me. But in today's world, we're just much more newsworthy, right? We get the news much quicker with social media. And honest to God, in 1995 to 1996, when they had a total of 27 days that shut down between 1995 and 1996, 27 days of the government shutting down. I do not recall that. Some of you may. Good on you. Personally, I don't think I was interested at all one way or the other during that year, being I was on tour and had just moved to Seattle, Washington, and had just landed a record deal with A&M Records. So I think it was the last thing on my mind. And, of course, the government shutdowns did not affect me in any way. But, when you look at it today, you've got, and I didn't get the statistics for the 27 days that were shut down during those 2 years, between